Hello, hello, everybody. Hi. So, guys, welcome to today's live session where we're going to be sharing about our journey of 5 years, 9 deals. So, here we go, guys. There has never been a time in history where it's easier to create wealth than right now. But it doesn't feel like it, right? And because you don't feel like it, then people think it's hard. But it's not really because it's hard, but it may because it's hard for you right now. Today we're going to show you why it feels so hard for you, and of course, at a certain point in life, it felt really hard for us too. And we're going to discuss why so many real estate entrepreneurs and people who are switching careers to real estate often fail. And if you don't make these mistakes, your real estate investing business will succeed. So, we just have a coaching call with one of our client Kurt earlier this week, who is really a highly successful business owner who isn't as far along in terms of financial as she hoped, right? So she have explored multifamily apartments. She's in real estate, working with apartments, but she hasn't found that kind of success in terms of financial or being in a team yet. So
we're going to use our trusty board right now. So we're going to write down the mistakes you need to avoid so that you can grow your real estate investment business. Having been in this industry for 5 years and having gone through 9 deals, about $300 million asset under management, let's say that we don't wish you guys to make the same mistake that we did, so that your efforts to becoming extremely wealthy in multifamily will become easier than what we experienced. Okay, so
are we ready for mistake number one?
you know what? I am, but you know what? I don't even know exactly how to write the board. Technology can do that to us. Okay, so instead of writing on the board, why don't we just say them, right?
Okay,
So
guys,
we can
are
always
you
improvise.
ready? Are you ready for this? We need some thumbs up. We need some wave. Hello, people on YouTube. Hello, people on Instagram. Okay, guys.
So,
Mistake number one, not knowing your value and how to articulate, and you fail to ask potential partners what they're looking for.
Okay, so what does that mean?
Oh, wow.
So that's a mouthful, right? So the thing that most people, as they're entering a new business, or like specifically for us in real estate, what we fail to understand is like,
Well, when we first enter real estate, right, we kind of brainstorm just two of us. And we kind of think, okay, we lack the net worth. We don't have millions of dollars in our bank account. And then we didn't have the network of investors needed to raise $1 million from. So, and then for us, it was really difficult to build relationship with brokers, as you could imagine, right? Like we didn't know.
we're new to the business, right? So it comes with the territory. And I think like one of the key things that the reason we struggled so much with that at the beginning was we were really thinking about it from our point of view. So we were thinking, what do we have? What are the things that we want? And then so the skill sets that we had, what we should have done instead is like, so at that time we were thought like, okay, if we didn't have the net worth, if we didn't have the network, if we didn't know brokers,
then we didn't even live on landlord, business, investor friendly state. So for us, what would be the easiest way is to focus on underwriting, right, Palm?
So when we first started doing underwriting, it's sort of like it's interesting. So a lot of people we talk to, if you don't have the network or the net worth, you tend to lean towards like underwriting, which means like financial analyzing the property, right, to see if it makes sense. And even if you're not good at it, sometimes you still jump into that because you're like, well, it's something I can control. Because just open a spreadsheet and just punch in some numbers. But the problem that we see a lot of time with that is like, number one is like being new to the game. It means that there's an art and a science to underwriting, and the science of it is like, hey, punching in certain numbers, you can get to you can get the wing of that pretty quickly. Like, hey, purchase price, put it here. Hey, interest rate, put it here. What are the current rents? Put in this box. Where it gets tricky is the art. So the art requires, so how much rent increases can we achieve? How much is the exit cap can be entered? Like, how much will this property sell for in 5 years? How much increase in income do you think we can get over the course of our business plan, which typically is 5 years? What are some of the expenses? Because, for instance, insurance in Phoenix versus insurance in Houston versus insurance in Atlanta, in Florida, totally different numbers. And so it's like, how do we understand that if you're brand new, right? So those are some of the pitfalls. But we were like, hey, we don't have to talk to anyone. We're just gonna go out and start underwriting deals. Like,
Yep. I think that's what we can handle. And I think in our mindset, we're like, okay, we're just gonna do this on our own.
so what happened there was like that was the reason that was our mistake is because actually the exact opposite what you should be doing. If you want to accelerate your growth in real estate or any other field, you don't try to go out and do everything yourself. You don't try to figure out what, why, and how all on your own, because not only will you not know the right or the wrong a lot of the times, but also it may take you forever to get there. The thing that you need to the thing is you need to focus the who in this groundwork who've already established those relationships with brokers who actually have the localized knowledge to understand like what are these expenses that we should even put into increases, what are some of the struggles maybe they've experienced in other properties in that same submarket. And so those are some of the things that we saw as when we first started. We thought like, okay, if we can figure out doing the underwriting thing, that makes sense.
And I think totally it's really natural for people to think that way because it's something that you can control. Because a lot of people, when they enter, they're like, I don't know any people who want to invest, or I don't know if they want to invest with me. So it's something that seems out of control. But here's the thing, now that we've been in the industry for a while, we realize it's harder for seasoned investor to partner with newer, people who underwrite, like Palm just said, due to the underwriting, right? Like it feels like we had to handhold them more than we would like to.
Yeah, the reason for that is like you can put in any numbers into the model to make it look pretty, but like to dig behind the scene, like where did you get your rent growth from? What are these rent rolls?
It's like more adding more
Like,
work
do you
to
have
us,
the
right?
right assumptions in place? And so like a lot of time more seasoned investors, seasoned general partners will probably say like, hey, let us handle that part because we feel like because we have a team that actually does the work for us. So we have analysts who are like specialized in this. We don't have to double check the work of someone who's just brand new. And so if someone complete like Nan got a text message recently, and we get this all the time. It's like, hey, Nan Palm, I'm looking at a deal in any city in the U.S. And it's like, would you be interested in partnering with me? And the thing is like,
I think it's kind of similar to how babies are, unsteady and they first need to learn how to walk. Just as baby frequently fall, new real estate underwriters are just beginning to understand all these like fundamentals. So partnering with them often means like we have to again handhold them intensively because they don't understand the nuance. So for us, like we prefer to do that with people who we already built relationship with, which is our key principal or our passive investors.
so basically, while we don't often join forces or look at deals when someone else brings the underwriting to us, we're willing to do that for some of our KPs or key principals or passive investors who've done multiple deals with us because they've built up an understanding of what our investment criteria are, and they also understand how we work, how we've communicated with them. If they're the type of people that are easy to work with, etc.
So because of that experience, like because we were like underwriting like the first few months of trying to understand this, and we didn't find any success, so we kind of have to shift our approach, right? So we have to learn to focus not on what we want to do, but what do other experienced people want to do.
So basically, it's like what's in it for them. So instead of saying like, "Hey, I want to do apartments because I want to XYZ," you have to look at things from their lens.
Yeah.
They're already successful general partners who probably have like a network of people they typically work with. What would make sense for them? Why would they want to work with you? And it's not like we don't work with new people. We sometimes do, but it has to make sense for both parties. And so like the most important thing is like you have to really communicate and ask them like point blank, like instead of saying, hey, I have deals I want you to look at, would you look at my deal that I've underwritten? Why don't you ask? The tip number one is like ask them like, hey, what are you looking for right now? Are there any areas in your business that you feel like there's a gap that you feel like I may be of value? Those are the kind of questions that you need to ask, and so that opens the door a lot.
Yeah, so because of how we shift our approach, That's how we first land our first deal. So we met our first.
Excuse
I mean,
me.
a lot of people ask us this: how do you get on your first deal? Like, how
Yeah.
do you get invited and all this stuff? Well, we met our first partner at an event, and one of them asked us, "Hey, could you raise a certain amount of money?" And then of course, along with, bless you, sorry, along with
That's how
performing
you know it's live.
while performing, some investor relations duty. So knowing that was what they were looking for, we just said confidently say yes. And of course, that led to mistake number two. Oh my God. So if you guys have any question, don't forget to drop it in. So mistake number two is not having system in place and lacking guidance on what's next, what is our next step. And we have to piecemeal everything together. Like that's what we call the duct tape approach from various sources, right?
So with this one, like the mistake from this part is like, okay, first we said yes when we really didn't know how, and then what's next? A lot of time, like what we've seen for ourselves and a lot of people who are new to multifamily, what tends to happen is they get very, very excited because obviously getting to multifamily, if you do it correctly, is really life changing in terms of like how wealthy you can get in this business in a
and
very
also
short period of
and
time.
also like the lifestyle freedom, the time freedom.
But so everyone gets very eager, and if you join like some sort of mentorship program, you're already pumped, right? Everyone's like already like pumped you up to the point where you're like, yes, let's do this. And people think like, even we did at the beginning, right? We think like, of course we can figure this out. But then that's where the problem occurs, when it actually happens, when your imagination or like your what you think is going to be like and reality, when that two forces clash.
Yes. So we take our commitment seriously. Like when we say, "Hey, we're gonna do this deal. We're gonna do this XYZ," and because integrity is everything for us, is our fundamental, right? And words means everything to us. So the thought of like letting down our team was really painful just to think, because once we committed to them. So when we were invited to join a team, we like we said, we were asked to raise certain amount of money and do some investor relations tasks. And as you might be aware, like when you're under contract, right? Like even you have like the best deal, but even though that is really conservative, that's really like, oh my God, this deal is going to make all of us a lot of money. But if you don't have the money to fund it, you're not getting that deal.
So okay, here's a thing, like multifamily has so many different aspects that we didn't know about and no one taught us, and so it was almost like they're expecting you to just like push you into the swimming pool, the deep end. You're supposed to figure it out, but that's not the most ideal way to do things. So some of the stuff that we didn't know, number one.
I mean, we have no idea what is capital raising really is about, right? We understood what it was, and we know some people who can potentially invest, but we didn't have a system or a process in place for effectively managing it.
So like on our first deal, like number one was like, how do we even communicate with people? Do we send an email? What do we like?
And
How do, and then and with
yeah.
that email, we didn't have a good plan in place. So we already had a list of some people, right? Because we were already dabbling in multifamily, and so at the moment that came when we had to send out the email, we're like, okay, how do we send it? Do we send it through? We import all the names in Gmail, and we're like, we created like an email, and we said sent all, and you press send, and then like immediately it was like undeliverable, and we're like freaking out because we're like, oh man, like we can't even freaking send out, if we can't even send out an email to our investors, how are we gonna even raise money from them?
Yeah, and can you imagine, that was such a like scary moment. So okay, so after we kind of successful sent out the first email, after that email, then we kind of piecemeal and learn how to do it. So our next problem was like, okay, how do we get people to open the email? How do we get people to register for the webinar? How do we get to people who register for the webinar to show up live in the webinar? How do we get
Follow up with them.
like get people to like what to do after the webinar? How to get people to watch the replay?
Yeah, how do they complete
How to follow up with
how
them?
do they complete the documents?
Yeah, so there was a lot of like, okay, what's next? What's next? It's like, okay, so we were like piecemealing people to send out the email, and then next is like we tried to get them to the webinar, but we didn't know that some of the people who sign up, they're not going to show up live, and that was like our first time. So we're like in panic mode. We're like, okay, what to do? We didn't have any system or any guidance, right?
So like, okay, let's go through the process of what happened in our first deal with that. So, once we sent out our initial emails, like, we figured out how to do it. We did do a
After our like
all of the
misery
fail,
fail.
and then we figured out, okay, we need a CRM. That's what it's called. Okay, got it. So we use a free one because we are like, oh, okay, this seems like an easy choice. We sent it out. Now the next step is like, okay, so what do we do on the webinar? What do we say? Is it how much information do you actually put in a webinar? And the other component is like we were doing a deal in a new city where a lot of our investors who are not used to investing in the pocket at all in that part of the country. So how much information do we need to have to include so that it conveys the right message? It's like a lot of data. Is that going to be too overwhelming? Like how much knowledge do these people even have about real estate? So like all these things were in our mind, and we're like, man, like we don't know any of these answers at all. And so we're like, okay, we got through the webinar. I think we barely, the technology also wasn't favorable. I think like we there was a time we were muted. There was a time like we kind of like lost connection for a bit. So technology is like, you know, wasn't our friend that day. So like after that, okay, so now the webinar happened. We're on the clock. Keep in mind that in multifamily apartments, typically you're under like a 60-day window, escrow period, that you're under contract that you need to close this deal. And though it was like a 3 point plus $1 million raise, for us at that time, that was a massive amount of money. We've never raised even like 500K, let alone a million, let alone 2 or 3. So it was a really big deal. The pressure was kind of high. And when we were like, we listed out, right, our not massive investor list, we listed it out, and we're like, okay, it's like, you know how like a checklist for people to say yes? Ours was like a no. It's like,
Our checklist does say no.
no, okay, this one already said no. This one already said no. And we're the type of people who don't like to, what are you doing?
Oh, sorry.
So we're like the type of people who don't like to be like, bother anyone. So we're like, okay, do we call them? Maybe we shouldn't call them because maybe that's going to be something that annoys them. Like, what's the protocol? How many times do you reach out? If they don't say yes, like, do we just leave them alone? So what we decided on that was like, okay, and this is preference, and you guys can do whatever you choose. But for us, we over time decided if someone wants to invest with you, they would first express interest, they would complete the subscription, or they'll email you. For us, we've chosen not to go and try to hound people to the end of the moon. Like, we're not gonna like, hey, I saw you came on our webinar. Like, are you gonna invest? Are you gonna invest? And just pester them. Like, that's not our style. We want the experience for people to have with us to be nice and easy. If they don't want to invest, it should be like zero pressure. Don't invest. It's okay. And we can still be friends. So in fact, we actually had someone, which is funny. So we had someone talk to Nan and say, "Hey Nan, I really enjoyed talking to you about this thing, but I'm gonna choose. But I've elected to invest with someone else. But I hope we don't have hard feelings, and we can still remain
That
friends."
was our first deal.
Yeah.
And then guess what happened?
Okay, wait. And then no, before that, then Nat said, "Yeah, sure, what happened? No problem, right?" And then they kept talking this whole time. Fast forward to 27 months, our first deal sold, 3x plus return for our passive investors. Yay! Like a lot of money.
What that means is like if you put 100K, you get
Three. You know, the
300.
deal made triple the money for
Yep.
the investors. Our friend's deal that he chose to go invest with someone else, I think after 5 years, it barely sold.
Yeah.
Maybe break even, something like that.
No, it gained like 40% or something, but in like 5 years.
Okay.
So it's like,
So it took longer. So he wanted to try something else, and that's the case. See, like, we are not gonna like end our relationship with you just because you chose not to invest with us. Because number one, I think like everyone should have this like feeling of comfort knowing like you're never gonna be pressured to doing anything.
I mean, like just like over the weekend, someone asked me, told me, I known you for 2 years, yet I haven't invested with you yet. I need to invest in your deals.
Cool.
And we're like, cool, love you. You know?
So like because of the system we've established now over 5 years, things are completely different than they were when we were still doing mistake number one, mistake number two. Because now a lot of times we get people just inbound requests to invest with us versus us having to do outbound. The only time we do outbound is when we have a new deal and we're announcing it because we need to let people know that it exists, right? So that's the level of sort of like passiveness of how we raise money, because the type of people we are is we just don't like to stress about this stuff, and we don't want anyone else to be who are around us to feel also stressed if they felt like, man, oh, Nan's coming, I better duck because I know Nan's gonna come pester me about investing. Like, that's not the kind of the relationship we want. We want people to be like, hey, Nan's coming, let's go talk. And then even if Nan, like, oh, I'm not gonna invest with you in this deal, and Nan's gonna smile and say like, that's totally okay. I'm okay with that. No problem at all, right?
I've always say it's funded already.
Yeah.
It's fully funded. Sorry.
The other part
Which
that
is the truth. Our deal get funded really
pretty
fast.
fast. Yeah. So the other thing that, inside of mistake number 2 that comes to mind, and is like really the time constraint, because 60 days seems like a long time, maybe to some people, but 60 days starts when they sign the purchase and sale agreement, agreeing to get into under contract so that you can purchase the property from them. But day one, you don't have access to your investment documents. So it's not like day 0 is day 60 where you can like, hey, I have 60 days to raise money. Typically, once you have the deal under contract, your lawyer starts drafting the investment documents, which is called subscription documents, so that in that preparation, if you're new to that law firm and they don't, because these are not really boilerplate, if you're new to that law firm, it could take up to like 3 to 4 weeks to get that done, because you may have to go back and forth with them like, no, I want this document to include these provisions, and they weren't used to it, stuff like that. So 60 days may never actually be 60 days. 60 days may be more like, I don't know, on a good day, like 40 days, maybe 30 days. So the clock is ticking this whole time. So there's never a point where you're raising money if you're just getting started, where you feel like, oh man, I can just like cruise through this. It's like at every single step, you have to have full belief that you can execute. When you start by, even like to this day, like now the system's totally different. We already pre-plan exactly how many emails needs to go out, what is the messaging for every single email, what are we going to do, what are the information we provide in our webinar deck, how does the subscription process work, how smooth it is, how easy it is for someone to complete the investment documents with us, how easy it is for them to like do the wire transfer of their actual investment. All those things now, due to like all the experience of doing it piecemeal, like the duct tape style, we now have that roll into how we do our investments. We've invested even just in the investment software, the portal. Imagine like TD Ameritrade or like Charles Schwab, where you guys go into log in for your stock account information. We pay for a subscription for a service similar to that, but for multifamily apartments. And for that service alone, we pay around like $21,000 or $22,000 per year, just so our passive investors can have the best experience possible on the platform. So that because we've invested when that document wasn't right, even with our own deal, and it's a really clunky, difficult, and frustrating process, and we don't like that at all. So that like, okay, what's in the webinar, what's in the subscription, and more importantly, I think this is a point that like new even experienced people sometimes they take for granted, is like, hey, once they wire you the money, a lot of time, like, you have to deal with this thing called like buyer's remorse. So before then, everything is exciting, fun, and people are like, okay, I sent them, I'm ready to send, this totally makes sense, the deal is, I'm excited to make a lot of money with you guys. The moment they send the wire, not all people, and we hedge against this, so we've never experienced it ourselves, but like we need to make sure to ensure them like, hey, they've done the right thing, and that we're going to continue to communicate with them the entire way. So it's like, hey, we got your first thing, super simple, got their wire, send the wire information. Like, these are things we didn't know, right?
Yep.
When we first started. So it's like, hey, send the confirmation. After that, give them expectations. We, on the same email that we send the confirmation, we always list out like, hey, this is what you're going to expect from us. You're going to get monthly newsletter even before we finally own the property when we close, right? What are the next steps? Where do you find the documents? Where do I find my tax filing documents? Any and all information we feel deemed necessary for them to know, like, hey, there's a progression happening with this property. We're gonna do that even before we close, for sure. So that they feel like, okay, they're not just like they gave us some money and we just ran off and to our world. Not that people think that it's being stolen, but sometimes they feel like they're being neglected. And that's the thing that we don't want our passive investors to feel like. A lot of teams, they tend to woo people a lot on the upfront, right? Think of it like as the sales part. You woo people, and like once you get that purchase, they're like, I'm out, I'm missing an action, and that's not okay with us. Like the way everyone in multifamily should approach it is like, hey, that entire process, you need to take care of this person because they're going to be your biggest advocate. They're the people who are a lot of our investors now come from referrals, and
Mm-hmm.
how we've gotten referrals is because we've done a good job with our investors. We've done what we say, and then we say what we've done. So basically, like they have that comfort with us. It's never been perfectly smooth. There's always going to be bumps in the road, but as long as you can clearly tell them like, hey, this is what's happening now, and this is how we're trying to solve for it, or this is how we solve for it. Most people are okay that an investment they understand is never going to be like, oh, like this,
I
right?
think they prefer for us to be straightforward.
Yeah.
Like, in times of if there's challenge, just say what are the challenge and how we're gonna solve them, right? So going over again, mistake number one is not knowing your value and how to articulate it, and failing to ask, potential partners. We hope that they're like more experienced than you. What are they looking for, right? And then there's five bucket. Sometimes they look for your network. Sometimes they're looking for you to be the people who raise the capital, or sometimes they want you to build relationship with the brokers, or sometimes they want.
Asset management. Sometimes they want you to be the balance sheet person. So there's always a role for you. Like if going back to number one, if you came to us today and you said, hey, I want you to, as example we said earlier, hey, I have a deal that I'm going to underwrite. Would you guys mind partnering with us? Because of all the constraints and how much work and effort it'll take us in a new market, most likely we're going to probably say no because that's just a lot of work for us. But if you came and said, look, Palm Nan, like I have the capacity to raise money for your $5 million,
$10 million.
whatever it is, okay? And then you're like, I would love to be able to join your team for your next deal. Imagine how much easier that process is going to sound. Because for us, we already have our investment criteria. We have our analysts. We know exactly what deal we're looking for. So we don't have to worry if the financial model that you completed is correct or not as being a newcomer. So for us, like that part can be eliminated. Now we would trust that, like, hey, if you say you can raise money and you explain exactly why you think you can raise money, or maybe you've said like, hey, I've done this before, that's perfect. Then that's like that opens so many doors, not just for us, but a whole bunch of other people. So like,
Yes, and so going back, recapping, we
going
recap.
back to
So
going back.
we're recapping. So mistake number two is not having a system in place and lacking guidance on what's next step, and had to piecemeal together information.
Yeah. So in that, again, it's like before you get in a deal, like we always talk about, like you always have to find deal and find money at the same time. Finding the deal, finding the money. It can't be. I only focus on finding the deal and I don't focus on finding the money. So those two things go hand in hand. Now, because we say it doesn't have to be what, why, how, right? You don't always have to be the one finding the deal. If you have the capacity to raise the money, you can always come in with someone else who has the experience, who already have the track record, who can help you on that front. So go in with a game plan, go in with a strategic um, understanding of like what are you going to do at each point in the process. Because if you were like us and you're like, oh man, like you're just like reactive to everything that's coming your way, it's going to be so much harder.
Yes. Okay. So moving on to mistake number three, not knowing your teammate well or at all. Ooh, that's a big one, right?
It's big, but yet like people in multifamily tend to not take it as seriously. So for us, even though I can say like Nan and I, we're very cautious who we partner with. It's never been perfect, right? There's always been surprises that we didn't anticipate. For instance, like one of the deals that we're in, not a recent one, but one in the past, like there was so much going on back and forth because it was happening during COVID. Like our partner at the last, one of our partners at the last minute, he actually said, "I'm backing out. I'm taking all my investors. I'm not doing this deal anymore." And it took like a 6 a.m. phone call from me to like, hey,
I,
walk him off back off the ledge to be like, wait, like calm down. Like we can still figure this out. And ultimately, I was able to luckily talk him back into it because the money was already wired into the account, everything was ready to go, and he was like, oh no, and it was something super innocuous, it wasn't even something major, it was like, why would you make a big deal out of that, right? But it happens sometimes.
I mean, that's why it's so important that you get to know your teammate before you're involved. Imagine, right? We're under contract, we're under
A
like
lot of pressure.
timeline,
Yep.
and then hard earnest deposit. in that case, I mean, in our cases, is already in, and he's like, I'm gonna walk out with my investors, and we're like, wait, we're closing in 2 days. We yeah, we can go out and raise more money. We could try, but we
But
don't.
not
Not
in
in
two
two
days.
days. So
Yeah.
we're like, that's really like scary,
Yeah, and so
actually.
like not knowing what was the trigger, what things that we didn't even know was going to be a trigger for him became such a big deal. And that's why like as you get more seasoned in multifamily, try to stick with the same team as much as possible. Of course, like from time to time you'll bring in different people to help enhance the team, but always try to focus on having the same core team because at the very least you know their behavior, you know what's their trigger points, you know their strengths and their weaknesses, and most importantly, like you know that they have like an alignment of interest with you.
Yes, and I hear this all the time. They always come to us and say, "Oh, man, or Pawn, right? I'm in a deal," and I'll be like, "Wow, exciting!" I'm like, "This is so good. Like, whose deal are you in? Like, who's the lead GP and who's the asset manager? Because these are the key people in multifamily." And they will be like, let me check. Like, let me check their names, and I'll be like, "Wait, what?" Like, to be frank, like I was like, that's a red flag, you know? Like, it's just unwise to, let's say, like, if you kind of compare this to marrying someone who you don't really know, but you marry them and then get to know
It's
them
like that
later, right?
show. Isn't there a TV show that says like Married at First Sight or something? It's kind of like that, right?
Someone actually
Wayne
said,
asks, it's hard to find good contractors. Any tip to finding good contractors? So I have a theory on contractors, but like, depending on what you're doing, you should be able to get
are you,
referrals.
Wayne, is it single family or is it multifamily that you're talking about?
So we'll come back to that once in a while. So basically, I think like when we get into these partnerships, it's like then it actually makes our lives so much easier. Like these days, we have like specific roles. It's like, hey, I'm gonna tell this partner to work on this part, or like, don't worry, like this person is really good at like financing part. Let's have him talk to the lender. So Wayne asked for single contractors. So
It's a single family.
the simplest way, Wayne, is like to drive the neighborhood that you're looking to do your purchase your home or do the work in, and see who are some of the contractors out there and just scope their work and just like walk in and introduce yourself and see like are they doing the things that look like kosher, are they is the area really clean, is it messy, because like a lot of time what we see is like messy contractors do messy work. So those are some of the little tips. The other stuff is you can always go to like what are they called, like Home Depot or any other stores, so you can see the most of the people that walk in there, they look like contractors. Like they wear those boots, they have a Carhartt shirt, all that stuff.
Yeah, the beautiful part about multifamily apartment investing is that we don't have to
Yeah,
deal
we
with
don't do
that
that part.
anymore. When we were in single family flipping, so we had to deal with contractors, so we understand the pain of finding good contractors. But with multifamily, is like we work with the property management team, and they handle all the hassle.
So, for instance, like we had a fire in one of our apartments, and so right now we're almost done with the construction. So what happened is that uh, obviously we have a contractor team on site, right? They've beautifully done stuff on time. In fact, earlier than scheduled. We were supposed to finish by end of June, but right now by end of May we'll finish. So that June, July, that was our target. Even later at the beginning, but like because we already have the property management company already had a good relationship, so it was like a one step of like verifying that they're going to be good for it. We went through like a bidding process. We have like good contractors that are willing to work with us now. The other thing is because our properties are hundreds of units, 200, 300 unit apartments. That's a really good contract to have, right? So the contractors know like, hey, we're good for the payment for the project, but also there's a repeat business and we have multiple properties, so they always feel comfortable knowing that like, hey.
Yes, and also like the property management team, they don't just asset our properties, right? Like we may have a few hundred units with them, but they have like thousands of other doors. So for them, like this contractor, like
They
that's
probably do work on other stuff with them.
yeah. So for us, it's just way easier whenever we are out of the single family space and just do the multi-family space.
Yeah, and like in terms of like not knowing your teammates, as mistake number three, like here's some of the scenarios that happen along the way, and some of them happen to us and some happen to other people. Part of it would be like misalignment of business plan. For instance, if you're like, hey, we should aggressively increase rents, and they're like, no, we can't do that. Or hey, we should continue to renovate our interior units of our apartments, and someone may say like, no, we don't want to spend that money. So like those are like very, very strong clashes of business plan, and those are things that like, how do you resolve them? One of the tricks I learned from one of the attorneys that we worked on with early on was make sure that you have in your operating agreement for your business, your company's operating agreement, like how do you resolve conflict, especially if you have even number of partners. So let's assume that let's say you have 4 partners and all of them have 25% shares, right? So if two's on one side and two's on the other side, how do you break the tie? So that needs to be established ahead of time, because like it didn't happen to us, but it happened to someone we know where it's like they didn't have a tiebreaker in place, and then like it became messy.
Yeah, it's so messy because like two people like wants to keep the current property management team. The other two is like, no, we need to fire the property management team, and they're like, like against each other. So it was really heartache
Contentious.
to see them,
Yeah,
right?
because it's like one side is like, no, I'm sympathetic to the current property management team. They're trying really hard, although they're underperforming. The other side is like, oh, heck no, this is a business. We have passive investors that are relying on us to push performance, and we can't just be like allow people to not be A players on our team. So that's like the kind of clash that happens, and those are major things. Like guys, like we're dealing with like our properties are nowadays are like 70-80 million dollars in value each, right? So we started with like 6+, but now and then it became like
Million plus.
16. It just jumped up, escalating. Like these are multi-million dollar properties, so we have to treat it with that kind of like care of like details. Like what is it that we need to make sure the partnership understands? And also like right now, one of the things that we really, really discourage is like partnership hopping.
Yes.
So you want to talk about partners, what that means?
I'll let you do it.
Okay, so partnership hopping is like, for us, we like to work with the same core team. Again, for like operationally business philosophical reason, it makes way more sense. There's other people who just hop from deal to deal to deal. So instead of having like 3 people as their partner, core partners, they may have like 3 times 4, so like 12 different people that they're working with. The problem with that is even on the loans or something, if something happens to one of their property, it may affect our property, right? Because like something happens to their deal, it may affect our ability to refinance, get a loan, etc. So we try to discourage people from doing that. I just think like operationally and even for fairness of your passive investors, you just want to be able to give them the best chance of success. And if you're just hopping from deal to deal, like one team may be very aggressive, one team may not be, and then like there's no consistency.
I mean, imagine like you're not knowing your teammate really well or at all, and you keep on hopping and hopping and hopping, right? That's not the way to
sounds like
do
a rabbit
business, right?
Yeah. So finding great partners, I think
So here's the question: how do you find great deals with partners?
Okay, so it goes back to mistake number 1. Make sure you understand.
For those who just tune in, mistake number 1 is
Not knowing your value and how to
articulate
your value to your potential partner. So for us,
and even failing to ask them what are they looking for.
What are they looking for? So for us, what we always recommend is go to events where you know these people are going to be. A lot of times this can be like a simple meetup in your local market, right? Or there's going to be conferences or anything like that you can attend. Network and connect and kind of identify like, hey, I want to invest in Florida. I want to invest in Orlando, or I want to invest in Jacksonville. Let me network with people, find people, and tell them like, hey, I'm looking in Jacksonville. Maybe they can recommend someone. Like, hey, I think you need to go talk to Jeff because Jeff's in Jacksonville, or he's also looking there. So that's first, right? Just communicate that. Meet Jeff, talk to him, and say, hey, this is my name, and by the way, like, right now, like, what are you guys looking for as far as like things to enhance your team? Is there anything that you feel like, man, if I have this piece, can I make our company like catapult to the next level? And most of the time they're going to tell you. And again, we're always looking for deal and always looking for money. If you're going to be able to help someone by bringing in more money, they're never going to say no to you for the most part.
Yes. Yeah. So how do you find great deals with great partners? Well, you just need to start looking, right?
Yeah.
And don't be like us, who we just kind of work just between us, and we just kind of, at beginning, we didn't really like seek out other peers. We just like, oh, this is what we feel like we want to do, and this is what we're gonna do, without checking with the market what the market actually want from
Yes.
us. So once we turned that, we kind of skyrocket.
And as far as like a good partner, I think like that has to be your personal instinct and like just communicate. And if you don't start from day one, like, hey, I'm already like I committed to you. I just met you, but I'm committing to a 5-year relationship with you that has a lot of money on the line. You're gonna be okay because like you guys are all smart people and you can instinctually know like, oh, this doesn't make sense or doesn't feel right. And a lot of things that we talk about are like anecdotally as mistakes that we've experienced. Use those as like sort of talking points. Like, hey, how do you feel about this point? Like, what would you do in this instance? And in that case, you're gonna be able to like really. So you're gonna be able to pick it up. You're like, oh, this is sound like it doesn't make sense. Like for instance, today, unfortunately, we had to let go one of an employee of ours. Like work wise, he's like probably 85%, but attitude wise, he's probably like a 55%. And it hasn't been long. He otherwise was fine, but it's just like we felt like the longer we keep this person on, the more tension and unnecessary like tension and attention that we have to give to him. Though he's supposed to relieve our workload, it's just actually adding to it. And it's just like we want to work with people we feel like have a very like in tune speed and also like belief. And so those are the things you use when you're thinking about partnership.
Okay, next question is, what are good real estate funding companies, like hard money or other lending?
For us with multifamily apartments, these are larger projects. So typically you get loan from like a lender. So lenders doesn't have it, most likely right now are not banks, but they're like Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, HUD, or like private equity funds that are lending for multifamily purchases. And then like the rest of the fund, we raise the capital. For instance, if you're doing like a $10 million purchase on a property right now, you probably get like maybe 55% leverage from the lender. So meaning the lender will probably lend you 55%, including some renovation budget, right? So maximum maybe 55. So of 10 million, that's a $5.5 million loan. Now you have a $4.5 million gap. Where do you solve that? You solve that by raising money from other people, what we call OPM, other people's money. So, and that's like where we feel like part of the reason we became
The Kitty Sisters.
the Kitty Sisters in 5 years is because we hone in on that skill set of, hey, how do we get really good at OPM, raising other people's money?
And I think it goes back to mistake number one, because again, we were just in our own world trying to solve the problem by just asking ourselves, not really asking the marketplace or the seasoned people, like what are they looking for. And once we discover this is what they're looking for, we're like, okay, how do we help them solve that problem? How do we add value to them? And then again, to go back is like, find a great partner, you actually have to learn how learn their pain and how you can solve their problem.
And like in the 5 buckets that we generally talk about for people in multifamily, and I know that natural asked about like how do I get started? I'm new to this, so like
Where do I start?
Where do I start? Right.
That's what the question.
So of the 5 buckets, network, balance sheet, asset management, or like relationship, those are probably pretty hard. Like those all come with time. Eventually you'll have them, but you may not have them day one. But the one that you definitely can do, and it doesn't require you to be independently wealthy, is to raise money, right? Because it's not your money. It's your ability to convey a really cogent investment thesis to someone and that they believe in it and they invest in your deal. So therefore, that's the fastest and most reliable way we've seen in the last 5 years for anyone who want to get started and don't know all the ins and outs of multifamily, but want to get in on a good deal with a good general partner, an experienced team that has a good track record. That's what you'll do. You'll end up saying like, hey, I can do capital raising, but I'll also do other functions as well. Because unless you are like a broker, you cannot come in to just raise money, right? That's illegal under the SEC guidelines. So you have to be able to raise capital, but also perform other functions. And it could be things like, say, create the newsletters that you're going to send out to investors,
Be an advisory on a board, like
respond to emails, correspondence with team, do like, hey, social media outreach to just promote the project, etc.
be involved with the tax, like with the CPA, the K1.
All that stuff. There's tons of things you can do in addition to raising money. But of course, to get in the deal, you'll probably raise money because that's the first thing you do before all the other functions happens after you close on the deal. So I would say like the easiest path, and we've seen it over and over again. Like if you can learn how to consistently raise a lot of money, you will have the doors open to you.
Yes. So, guys, if you're serious about transitioning into multifamily apartment investing and potentially making a lot of money, millions we're talking about, it's essential to treat this as a long-term commitment rather than a hobby, right? Like, what is a hobby? A hobby is something where you do it when you feel like it. For example, like you can be, your hobby could be building a Lego set, right? You do it when you want to. So this venture could have significant implication for you and your family, right? For real. It totally changed our life, the way we live, the way our lifestyle is. So being selective and cautious to who is your teammate is crucial. You don't want to risk your future by just partnering with anyone. I mean, in 2023, we turned down $250 million in value, in property value, which was like significant for us, right? That's a lot of money, but we were really committed to our long-term success rather than just to gain quick gains. And boy, we're so glad because
so lucky.
We're so lucky because one of the deal is that closed in Q3 of 2022. We don't want to say who are the whose deal it was and whose name, but according to an investor who's involved, it already have two major capital calls.
Yeah.
And what is capital calls?
So basically, it's when like, hey, the investor asks for more money from their passive investors. So it happens from time to time, but it shouldn't happen after one deal, right?
I mean, yeah, so we don't know the details, but we're just glad we're not involved at all, right? So are you guys picking up on what we're putting down right now? Give us a hello, yay, right? Yes, give us a wave. Okay, someone asked, where and how do you raise capital?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
that's a great question.
We got you asked. If you guys could avoid these mistakes, your real estate investing business might face challenge for other reasons, but it won't be because of this reason. So now, if you're ready to supercharge your capital raising game and grow your wealth through real estate investing, all by leveraging other people's money, then we have a good news for you guys. Join our next 5-day Raise More Money Challenge. Your key to learning how to raise all the dollars, all the money you need for every single deal. So what you need to do, all you have to do is head to raisemoremoneychallenge.com to join now. Again, that's raisemoremoneychallenge.com to join now. So don't get caught up in the single biggest struggle that experienced people say to you that, hey, it's hard to raise money, that there's no capital, right? There's a shortage of money or unwillingness of investor out there. You just need the right tools for attracting them, and we just got the thing for you.
The Raise More Money Challenge teaches our exact blueprint for attracting leads and investors to keep your capital rolling in. No wealthy friends or connection needed whatsoever.
Yep, so when you join the challenge, you will have immediate actionable plan and ways to raise more money fast, right? So again, all you have to do is go to raisemoremoneychallenge.com. Again, that's raisemoremoneychallenge.com. Woo!
Yay!
Okay. Yay, we got a wave. Woo, that's so cool. Okay, guys. Or if you guys have any question, drop it in. If not, we'll see you next time.